Swiped right into danger, the fatal Tinder date that shocked a community. Grace Emmy Rose Mullane was born in 1996 in Essex, England, into a loving and close-knit family. She was the youngest of 3 children, with 2 older brothers, Michael and Declan. Grace was the heart and soul of her family, sociable, lively, and always surrounded by love. From a young age, she had a passion for creativity and anything artistic, which reflected her vibrant and spirited personality. Grace's love for art and creativity wasn't just a hobby, it was a core part of who she was, shaping her outlook on life and how she connected with the world around her. Grace attended the University of Lincoln, where she chose to study advertising and marketing, fields that perfectly aligned with her creative talents and love for communication. After years of hard work and dedication, she graduated with pride, ready to take on the world. But before stepping into the next phase of her life, Grace felt a deep yearning for adventure. She wanted to see the world, experience different cultures, and make memories that would last a lifetime. For a year, she diligently saved every penny she could, planning a year-long backpacking trip that would allow her to explore new places, meet new people, and create stories she could share with her loved ones. Grace was known not only for her adventurous spirit, but also for her deep compassion and caring nature. Just before she left for her trip, she made a deeply thoughtful gesture that spoke volumes about her character. She cut off her long, beautiful hair and donated it to the Little Princess Trust. This organization turns donated hair into wigs for children who have lost theirs due to cancer, a cause that resonated deeply with Grace. This act of kindness was just one example of the many ways Grace sought to make a positive impact on the world around her. In October 2018, with her bags packed and her heart full of excitement, Grace set off on her long-awaited adventure. She left her family home with a mixture of anticipation and eagerness, ready to embrace whatever the world had in store for her. Her journey began in Peru, a country known for its rich culture and breathtaking landscapes. Grace spent 6 unforgettable weeks traveling through South America, immersing herself in the vibrant local cultures and meeting fellow travelers who, like her, were in search of new experiences and connections. Along the way, she formed new friendships, shared stories, and eagerly kept in touch with her family and friends back home, sending regular updates and photos that captured the joy and excitement of her travels. On November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand, a place she had longed to visit for years. At 21 years old, she was full of life, brimming with enthusiasm, and ready to embrace everything this stunning country had to offer. New Zealand, with its picturesque landscapes, welcoming people, and rich Maori heritage, was the perfect backdrop for the next chapter of Grace's adventure. After spending 11 days traveling around the country, soaking in its natural beauty, and experiencing the warmth of its people, she finally reached Auckland. Auckland, New Zealand's largest city, is a bustling hub of culture and diversity. Often referred to as the City of Sails, Auckland boasts a spectacular harbour filled with yachts and boats, with the iconic Sky Tower standing tall against the skyline. The city is a melting pot of cultures, offering a vibrant mix of cuisine, arts, and entertainment. From its lively markets to its serene parks, Auckland is a city where modernity meets natural beauty. Grace checked into a hostel called Base Backpackers on Queen Street, where she stayed in a shared room with other travelers. The hostel was a lively place, filled with people from all over the world, each with their own story and reasons for being there. Grace quickly adapted to the vibrant atmosphere, continuing to meet new people and soak up the dynamic energy of the city. But amidst this idyllic setting, a dark and heartbreaking story began to unfold. One that would shock not only the residents of New Zealand, but also people around the world. This is the story of Grace Mullane, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short in a city known for its beauty and safety. Saturday, December 1st, 2018, was a day that would change everything. That evening, Grace left the hostel just before 6 p.m. She was dressed in a stylish knee-length black dress, white shoes, and carried a small handbag, a picture of confidence and elegance. She was heading out to meet someone she had matched with on Tinder, a popular dating app. Initially, Grace wasn't entirely sure about meeting up, but after exchanging more messages and feeling a sense of connection, she decided to go through with it. They planned to grab some drinks together and enjoy the evening in the vibrant city. Grace met her date at Sky City, a large entertainment complex in Auckland with bars, restaurants, and a casino. The place was buzzing with life, filled with people enjoying their weekend, and Grace felt excited but cautious. She kept her friend Amina back home, updated on how things were going, sending messages that reflected her optimistic nature. She wrote, "I click with him so well. He's an oil manager and he lives in a hotel." From the outside, it seemed like the evening was going well. After spending some time at Sky City, they decided to move on to the Bluestone Room, a cozy bar nearby, where they could continue their conversation in a more intimate setting. But then, something strange happened. Grace got up from the table for a moment, and her date, without any apparent reason, picked up her handbag and began searching through it. This unexpected action caught Grace off guard, but despite this odd behavior, the evening continued as planned. Just after 9:30 p.m., Grace and her date left the bar, arm in arm, and walked down the street together, disappearing into the night. The next day, December 2nd, was Grace's 22nd birthday. Her family and friends were eager to wish her well, sending her messages and trying to reach out on social media, but there was no response from Grace. This was highly unusual for her. Grace, who had been so excited to share every moment of her trip, was now silent. Both of her phones were going straight to voicemail, something that had never happened before. Her brother Declan, who had been receiving regular updates and photos from her, was immediately concerned. Grace was very close to her family, and her sudden silence on her birthday was a huge red flag. Alarmed, her parents contacted the Auckland police and reported her missing. Where had Grace gone? By December 5th, the police began investigating Grace's disappearance. They reached out to the hostel where she was staying, only to find out that she hadn't returned after her night out on December 1st. Initially, there was no clear sign of foul play. Most of her belongings were still in her room at the hostel, leading some to hope that perhaps she had just stayed with new friends and lost track of time. But as the investigation continued, the police discovered something that made their concerns grow deeper. Thanks to the extensive CCTV network around the city, detectives were able to trace Grace's movements that night. The man she was last seen with was quickly identified, and the case began to take a more sinister turn. As it turned out, the man Grace had spent the evening with was Jesse Kempson, a resident at the City Life Hotel in Auckland. Jesse wasn't just any ordinary person. Just before Grace went missing, he had posted a strange and unsettling message on social media. In it, he apologized for his past mistakes, arrogance, and selfishness, a post that caught the attention of many. To make matters even more suspicious, Jesse had also commented on Grace's latest profile picture, which she had changed just before disappearing. Underneath the picture, he wrote, "Beautiful, very radiant." This comment, coupled with the eerie social media post, only added to the growing mystery surrounding Grace's whereabouts. What had happened to Grace that night? The search for answers was only just beginning, and as the investigation deepened, the unsettling truth would slowly come to light. But who was Jesse Kempson? Jesse, a 26-year-old from Wellington, had a troubled and unstable upbringing. His parents separated when he was young, leading to him moving frequently as a child. Much of his childhood was spent being raised by his grandparents, and as he grew older, he became estranged from many members of his family. Those who knew Jesse described him as a compulsive, pathological liar, someone who couldn't help but weave elaborate stories about his life. He claimed to be everything from the cousin of a famous All Blacks rugby player to someone dying of cancer. These lies weren't just small fibs. They were part of a larger pattern of deception that he used on employers, landlords, partners, and even his own family and friends. He had built his life on a foundation of lies, creating a persona that was far removed from reality. Jesse's lies eventually caught up with him. He frequently lost jobs and was evicted from apartments when the truth surfaced. A former landlord recalled how Jesse had claimed to be a professional softball player signed by New Zealand's national team, the Black Sox. Jesse repeatedly told his landlord that he was waiting for contract money to come through, but after 8 weeks of excuses, the landlord decided to contact the Black Sox management. Unsurprisingly, Jesse's story unraveled and his lies were exposed. He had also told his landlord at the City Life Hotel that he was a top manager for Woolworths, but in reality, his rent was being paid by state benefits. His last job was in telephone sales, but even that ended in a dismissal due to his dishonesty. On the very same day, he met Grace Mullane, December 1st. Jesse was the last person known to have been with Grace that night, making him a key figure in the investigation. When Grace was reported missing on December 5th, the police asked Jesse to come in for questioning.
And then we met at Sky City. And then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar.
He claimed that nothing unusual had happened during their date. According to Jesse, the night ended with a hug, a kiss on the cheek, and plans to meet again the following day. He told the police that when he tried to message Grace the next day on Tinder, he noticed she had unmatched him, and that was the last he heard from her. But the police weren't done. They were still reviewing the CCTV footage from the City Life Hotel, and what they found painted a much darker picture. The footage showed Jesse and Grace arriving at the hotel together, arm in arm, contradicting Jesse's claim that they had parted ways on the street. They exited the lift together on Jesse's floor, but Grace was never seen leaving the building. The following morning, on what should have been Grace's 22nd birthday, the cameras picked up Jesse leaving the hotel. The footage captured his every move throughout the day. He was seen shopping for a suitcase, then buying cleaning supplies. Just before noon, he rented a red Toyota Corolla. Hours later, Jesse met up with another woman he had matched with on Tinder. During their date, he made disturbing comments about burying bodies and mentioned that he had friends in the police. The woman was so unsettled by these remarks that she refused to get in his car and made her own way home, deciding never to see him again. Later that day, Jesse returned to the city centre and hired a Rug Doctor carpet cleaning machine. He told the staff he needed to clean up some red wine stains. That evening, around 9:30 p.m., Jesse was seen loading 2 suitcases onto a hotel trolley and then placing them into the Toyota he had rented earlier. The next morning, at around 7 a.m., cameras caught Jesse again, this time buying a shovel. 2 hours later, he was seen power washing the car before returning it to the rental company, where it was soon rented out to someone else. On December 5th, the day Grace was reported missing, Jesse was observed visiting several locations and disposing of items in bins. That same day, the police arrived at the City Life Hotel, looking to speak with him. As they approached the front desk, Jesse coincidentally walked into the hotel. The moment he saw the police, he quickly turned and tried to walk away, keeping his head down, but the officers noticed him, chased after him, and brought him in for questioning. Despite Jesse's initial denials, the police continued to search his hotel room thoroughly. The investigation was moving rapidly, and although the police didn't publicly name him at first, they confirmed that they had spoken to Jesse and considered him a person of interest. As more evidence came to light, Jesse was eventually taken into custody on December 8th and questioned again. This time, his story changed dramatically. In this second interview, Jesse admitted to killing Grace, but claimed it was an accident. He told the police that Grace had died during a consensual sexual encounter after asking him to choke her to enhance her pleasure.
Having, I guess, more violent sex, we ended up on the floor.
According to Jesse, he awoke the next morning to find Grace dead, panicked, and then decided to hide her body. He placed her in a suitcase and drove out to bury her, but he still denied any intentional wrongdoing. Jesse led the police to the location where he had buried Grace's body, finally ending the search. The truth was out, but it brought no comfort, only the cold, hard reality of a young life cut tragically short and a web of lies that had led to her untimely death. The story Jesse Kempson tried to spin was far from the truth. As the police dug deeper, they uncovered chilling details about what he did after Grace's death. Instead of calling for help or dialing 911, Jesse did something unthinkable. He didn't reach out to anyone for assistance. Instead, he started planning how to cover up what he had done. In the early hours of Sunday, around 1:30 a.m., while Grace's lifeless body lay in his room, Jesse began searching the internet. His searches were not those of a man in panic or grief, but of someone coldly plotting to hide his crime. He looked up hottest fire and Waitakere Ranges, the very place where he would later attempt to bury Grace in a shallow grave. But his actions didn't stop there. Jesse then spent time on a pornography website, searching for videos to watch. In a sickening twist, he took 7 intimate photographs of Grace's dead body, carefully arranging and manipulating her to get the shots he wanted. The horror of what Grace endured became even more evident after an autopsy was performed. A pathologist confirmed that Grace had been strangled, and her body bore bruises on her arms and chest, consistent with being held down. The force used on her neck was so severe that it would have taken 4 to 5 minutes to end her life. The tragedy of Grace's death shook everyone who knew her. Just over a month after her body was found, hundreds of mourners gathered for her funeral at Brentwood Cathedral in Essex. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who had led the investigation, flew to England to pay his respects and support the Mullane family during this heartbreaking time. 6 days after Grace was laid to rest, Jesse stood in the High Court and pleaded not guilty. His trial began in November of that year and lasted 3 intense weeks. Throughout most of the trial, Jesse remained emotionless, barely reacting as the evidence against him piled up. He occasionally glanced at court papers or held his head in his hands, but his expression remained cold and distant. Jesse's defense team tried to argue that Grace's death was not murder.
Did you kill Grace Mullane? Okay. Jesse Kempson, you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Mullane.
But a tragic accident during consensual rough sex that went horribly wrong. They claimed that Grace had engaged in similar encounters before, and that this time it had ended in a tragic case of sexual misadventure. According to them, Jesse panicked and tried to hide Grace's body after realizing she had accidentally died. But the prosecution wasn't swayed by this narrative. They came armed with overwhelming evidence, painting a picture of a calculated and deliberate crime. Jesse hadn't panicked. Instead, he had coldly and methodically covered his tracks, weaving a web of lies to protect himself. The jury saw through Jesse's lies and found him guilty. During the trial, he was labeled a sociopath, and it emerged that his disturbing behavior had made many women he met on Tinder feel deeply uncomfortable. One particularly horrifying incident came to light. 8 months before Grace's death, Jesse had taken another British tourist on a Tinder date. After bringing her back to his Auckland motel room, he raped her while she lay on the bed, paralyzed with fear. The young woman kept the assault a secret until she recognized Jesse from the news after he was charged with Grace's murder. She later testified that she suffered from nightmares and flashbacks, haunted by the memory of his angry, bulging eyes staring at her. Jesse's dark desires didn't stop there. Another woman, who had communicated with him online but never met him in person, revealed that Jesse had shared his twisted sexual preferences with her. He confessed to enjoying domination, a dangerous craving that the prosecution argued led to Grace's death. In a separate trial, Jesse was convicted of terrorizing his live-in girlfriend over several months. He subjected her to violent assaults, threatened her with a butcher's knife, and forced her into humiliating sex acts, claiming that he had been sent by the CIA to kill her. Even as the evidence mounted, Jesse refused to accept responsibility for his actions. In one of his trials, he brazenly shouted at the judge, "You have no reason to convict me. You're full of shit, mate." For months, Jesse's identity was protected by New Zealand's justice system, but that veil was finally lifted when he lost his appeal against his conviction and sentence for Grace's murder. Jesse was sentenced to 17 years in prison, a sentence that would run concurrently with the additional 11 years he received for his other crimes. In the end, Jesse Kempson was exposed for what he truly was: a manipulative and dangerous individual whose lies and actions caused unimaginable pain to his victims and their families. His imprisonment brought some measure of justice, but it could never undo the harm he inflicted. In a heartbreaking turn of events, Grace's father, David Mullane, passed away in November 2020 after a tough battle with cancer. Just a month later, in December 2020, the veil of secrecy protecting Jesse Kempson's identity was finally lifted. The Supreme Court rejected his final appeal against the sentence for Grace's murder, revealing his name to the public. Determined to keep Grace's memory alive and turn their grief into something positive, her family and friends took action. They rallied together and raised a significant amount of money, over £11,000, for the White Ribbon Campaign. This important charity is dedicated to ending male violence against women, focusing on educating and engaging men and boys to stand against violence and challenge harmful behaviors. Through these efforts, Grace's spirit of compassion continues to make a meaningful difference, offering hope and support to those in need. Though her life was tragically cut short, her legacy lives on through these initiatives, shining a light on the importance of protecting and supporting women everywhere.